Right. Hello, everyone. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to kind of jump on in, but in the meantime, feel free to turn your camera on. We'd love to see your face. You can, if you have a dog or a newborn baby, maybe pull them up. No, I'm just kidding. We are going to jump into today's event, but just a couple housekeeping items just to update everyone here. First things first, so thank you for joining us for our virtual coffee hour. Today's discussion will be mainly around fall church events. So you all registered for a certain breakout session or group or room. And depending on how many people show up, we may be in two groups, we may be in one and covering various topics. We'll kind of see as everyone trickles in, but it's really important that you all know that today's event is interactive. That's our goal here. We want you to be camera on. We want you to unmute and ask questions and answer questions. I know the format can be a little different than traditional events, but think of it like a fireside chat. We're just getting together, sharing strategies, ideas, challenges in this community that we have. So we have some questions that we'll use to kind of get the conversation going, but we would much rather you ask questions that are on, your mind, pressing on your mind or facing your church, and get those answered or be able to connect with those in this space as well. As well as, yeah, like I said, unmute. It's okay to talk. Maybe if you have a barking dog, mute for a little bit and then come off unmute. But we're grateful you're here. Additionally, we are recording today's event. So if, sure you're all busy if you need to hop for a second or you have a meeting or something like that, we'll send out this recording after today's event, so you can share it with maybe other leaders or colleagues, or friends even as well. Think that was most of the housekeeping items that were top of mind. Real quick, because I see everyone jumping in, and I love it. There's the chat that Stephanie just engaged in as well. I'm going to ask a little poll question just to get us going here. Um, since we're talking about fall church events, when does fall officially start, according to you? This is a hot topic amongst my team. I am, I don't want to say like a pessimist, but 4th of July happens and I'm like, all right, summer's over, on to fall. We're moving along. I know some team members that have, kids going back to school and it's really that transition. So curious what you think there, and I'll just leave it. It's kind of interesting results so far. And then we'll jump into it. I left off the 4th of July comment because I've been told that's the wrong answer. So I don't need any more judgment here. Um, all right. I'm gonna end this and just share it with you guys. So, okay, when the kids go back to school is the number one answer, and then September 1st and after Labor Day weekend. Interesting. Okay. So no matter what, I'm wrong here. So that's kind of the moral of the story. All right. So now that we have kind of everyone in, I'm going to go ahead and just stop sharing so I can see all of your faces and we can really engage. Since we have, it looks like just a few of you joining, which is great. Good to see you guys. We'll probably stay in just a giant room today, if that works for everyone, and we can kind of cover various topics. I know when you registered, some of the questions we asked were, do you want to talk about recruiting volunteers, background screening volunteers, and all that entails there. And then kind of the last one was regarding onboarding and matching volunteers to the right positions and roles. So we're gonna unpack all of that. And then some of you also shared specific questions that you had as well. So we'll try to include those in today's conversation as well. Does that sound good to everyone? All right. I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk. So I'm gonna transition it here. Why don't we start with talking about recruiting volunteers? I would just be curious, what are some of the top challenges you guys are facing when it comes to recruiting volunteers? Is it, bringing back volunteers from last year? Is it just finding new pools of volunteers? Anyone have any thoughts on that? Or is recruiting volunteers not a problem and you've got some ideas that you'd like to share?
One quick thing too, I think it'd be great to get to know you guys a little bit more, as well as letting us know maybe your church name or your organization's name, if it's not an actual church, and maybe your role within it as well.
Yeah, great idea.
We're gonna start picking on people too if nobody wants to talk.
Not all at once.
Yes, got Joseph to unmute.
So we do things a little different. I'm from St. Catherine's Episcopal in Marietta, Georgia. Traditionally, we've run this idea where we run no serve dates. So you tell me when you can't serve, and I tell you when you don't want to serve, and that's kind of how that runs. So about 2 years ago, we worked to go to a Sign Up Genius method. So for the month, in August 1st, I published everything that's available for people to serve, say ushers, in September, and you affirmatively choose your date, which has actually worked pretty well. The challenge I've run into is really getting people. I have a group of people that are very conscientious about looking for the emails, choosing their dates, and we email once a week, kind of update everybody on how the ministry is doing. But then I have this other group of people that seems to want to hang on and say I'm part of this, but really doesn't choose to be active. Their thing is, well, if you need me, I'm here, but you don't actually step up on a regular basis. So I'm looking for ideas for how to engage people to make affirmative choices for themselves to serve rather than me telling them when they need to serve.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joseph. Anyone else kind of I saw some head nods. Anyone else facing similar challenges?
Well, my name's Trish, and I am from the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation. So I'm not coming from ministry, but I wanted to hop on today. I'm the volunteer services coordinator, and we coordinate volunteers across all of Idaho state parks. So we have over 30 state parks, and I manage about 250 volunteers per season. So I definitely can empathize a little bit with Joseph, and we have similar issues, kind of, where a lot of our volunteers that are coming in seem to be developing this what are you going to do for me in their volunteer role persona attitude. And so that would be something that maybe a little bit off topic from recruitment, but we seem to have pretty good success with that. We utilize a couple of different websites that we market through, and pretty active in our social media. And so those are good pools to get people to come back for recruitment. So recruitment doesn't seem to be a huge issue for us, maybe a little bit just in our volume, but that looking for volunteers that are ready to serve rather than be served, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, so some crossover there. And especially when it comes to, it sounds like engagement. Um, Joseph, going back to your kind of comment on, they say that they want to serve and that they're available to serve, and you got to kind of direct them. Um, I'm just curious on, like, how do you guys currently measure, and this is a question for everyone, do you measure engagement any sort of way with your volunteers, or is it kind of like, the quantity of volunteers is the quantity, and we leave it at that versus, how many times they serve, or how many times they engage, I don't know, via email or something like that.
So for us, because we use Sound Genius, we actually keep record of who served at what service on what day, so on and so forth. I have not had the time. I'm the ministry teams coordinator. It's some job they made up for me. It's wonderful. But it gives me a wide latitude to stick my fingers in all over the place, which is wonderful. Um, and so, unfortunately, coming out of COVID, there was this huge transition where we lost a lot of the people that were leading ministries. And they were all working in their own silos and things like that. So I've got a lot of initiatives that I'm trying to kind of run through. I've been doing this about a year and a half, 2 years now, and we're making progress. So one of my projects is to take that data and actually analyze it, try to figure out who's active within the last 30, 60, 90 days, and figure out how to do that in a way that I can then hand off the ushers ministry to someone and they can replicate it without having to be a computer expert, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I'm hoping to get some insight with that. It's very interesting. Recruiting people is relatively easy. But then again, I'm not shy and I'm willing to walk up to somebody and say, when are you going to serve with me? So that helps. But at the same time, getting people to sit here and say, I want to look for the email, I want to choose my date, and I want to do that as soon as I can, rather than hanging back is kind of, I think, the challenge. We were doing this idea of trying to help our people discover the why they're doing it so that hopefully they can stay in touch with that why. And if they lose it, then they can come talk to me and we can help them. You know, I didn't come from a church background as far as administration. I'm retired. I'm a business guy, but I love our people, so I try.
Yeah.
Joseph, I'm wondering, have you ever thought about your volunteers that are very engaging and active and help out on a reoccurring basis? Maybe having them be advocates for what they're getting out of being a volunteer for the church and try and get others excited about it as well?
I think that would be a wonderful idea, and I would love to do it. My hard part right now is our rector. Like, I've been to churches where you might have a ministry that actually has a few minutes to talk to the parish before a service, like, in mass. Our rector's not a fan of that because that now gets every ministry wanting to come do that. And so that doesn't always work well. But um, I think getting them to get in touch with their why and hopefully start sharing it more matters. And I don't want to monopolize this whole conversation, ladies. So please feel free. Anyone who would like to jump in and save me, it's all good.
Yeah. No, you're good. Keep going,
Okay.
Joseph.
So I'm a big believer in leading by example. Okay. And never asking someone to do something that's undefined or something that they're going to fail at. Right. So one of the things we ran out late last year was this idea of this welcoming and safety initiative. We wanted to increase our church's security, but a locked door is not a welcoming door. But I didn't have enough people to have greeters, so I worked with the vestry and the current usher team to add a vestry member as a third usher for every service so we could welcome people at the door. And as part of that process, as I was training people to do it, I was at the door for every service for 2 months because I was training teams. The funny thing I discovered in that was how much God there is in opening a door and holding a door for people and smiling at them and welcoming them to church. And I've done my best to share that with people. That's part of the training of it. I don't know how to help them find the words to share with each other or with other people. Right? I can run around and recruit all I want, but I'm still just one guy.
Yeah.
Did you say, Joseph, that you're struggling with your records keeping and tracking hours and giving people credit and things like that?
No, well, so because we're using Sign Up Genius, where people are actually able to go in and say, I want to work this Sunday at the 8:30 service. No, I want to work 2 Sundays from now at the 11 o'clock service. I don't assign anything.
Mm.
And one of the challenges is, let's say, for instance, and this has not happened for ushers, but it could. We have a day where we just have one usher to work a service. What I would probably end up doing in a situation like that is I would come in, I would bump the usher that had volunteered to work, and I would work the service singly, solely so the rector can stand there and stand in front of the congregation and say, I need a volunteer. It's just, it hasn't happened often that we've had to adjust the flow of a service or something like that. I really actually wish it would happen more, because I think what happens is some people start to feel guilty towards the end and are signing up for multiple spots in a month because they don't want to have something like that happen, but I don't want them burning out either.
Joseph, on your email communications to those that raise their hand to serve, is it more like administrative on like, hi, you said you were going to sign up this Sunday, just kind of confirming that? Or are you also kind of incorporating the, we appreciate you raising your hand to serve, like, here's some previous people's why behind doing it. We'd love to hear yours type of messaging too.
I think it's a good idea to add that. My challenge has been trying to, I'm running too many ministries, at least in a service right now than I should. Part of that's twofold. One is the parish's population has gotten older quite rapidly in COVID. I see a lot of heads, and so most of the people are not computer savvy. So I've tried to develop systems that allow people to be as little, like you can work with me on your cell phone as long as you can use your cell phone. And I even have one gentleman that even Sign Up Genius on a cell phone's beyond him, and that's okay. But so I sent out an email to each ministry on the first of the month, basically saying the next month's open, and then inviting them to come and sign up. I highlight any openings that are still there in the current month. So when I did this on August 1st, I opened up September, and I told each ministry what openings were available still in August. And then as those got filled, then I focused more into September, and each 7 days I sent out another email to the entire group. So all people, 30 people in the usher group got an email together. All people in the lay Christian minister group got one. The readers got one, so on and so forth. Does that make sense? But I need to figure out I need people that either can help me, or I need to find the time to get the people that are working to give me some feedback in so I can start including what you're saying. Because I think that would be very helpful.
So I'm not familiar with Sign Up Genius. We use Volgistics for our volunteer management. And Volgistics has features like you can do group emails to everybody that is signed up as a volunteer, or it has an option to send SMS messages as well. So like text messages come through. I don't know if Sign Up Genius has those. Another thing it sounds like might be helpful, and I don't know about Sign Up Genius, but we do straight up time card keeping, where every volunteer submits a time card each month, and it goes into our database, and that really helps. And I mean, that could be something you can turn around and kind of broadcast, like, look, Joe Schmo has volunteered 148 hours last month, and and just kind of, while giving him credit for his service, also almost guilting your other volunteers to step up a bit.
Well, trying not to guilt. That's part of my goal, but I hear what you're saying. The reason we chose Sign Up Genius is, one, it was economical. And for the record, ACS and Realm have things built into it for some of this stuff. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that it doesn't or that it's not good. The challenge is the learning curve for my average older parishioner is
Mm.
much higher with Realm. So I'm working out a process right now with one of our volunteer photographers to help entice people into signing up for Realm and doing some of those things. And hopefully we might be able to get some people more used to that. I think we're probably 10 years away from having everybody be computer savvy enough. But a lot of people, especially if you're a mom or a dad, you've used Sign Up Genius for your kid at school.
Mm.
So it was like really, there was no learning curve for a lot of the people, which is why we ended up going with that. Not because I'm particularly wedded to it. It was just something that I didn't have to train 50 people how to use.
Yeah.
We have about 125 different volunteer slots just as part of services in a given month. That's acolytes, all of that. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Definitely. Henrietta, I saw your hand was up.
Yeah, we use Sign Up Genius as well. My name's Henrietta. I am the community engagement and volunteer coordinator for Interfaith Works. I do more shared supportive housing, which is like residents who are homeless from long periods of time. They live within the facility. There's a lot of tools in Sign Up Genius that kind of makes it easier, especially when it comes to like reminding people, messaging. It can also allow you to like let people swap stuff and stuff like that as well. And you can keep track of all that, just like logistics. I do not like logistics. um, it is really good for our ENC, which is like our community our clothing center stuff. They can work that whole system out really well. But it was hard for me to use logistics, but I think I needed to have somebody sit down with me and break it down.
Oh,
The
it
only
sure
thing
isn't easy.
yeah.
It's not user friendly. I'm just saying it has some good tools that I was hoping maybe this other website also would be available to.
Yes, Sign Up Genius definitely has a lot of stuff that you can utilize. I think it's depending on what package you have too, because we learned that as a company, what if you have like gold or platinum or whatever the different levels are, will give you more access. If you have a chance, I would definitely recommend setting up a meeting with whoever your contact is for Sign Up Genius. Like we did that with our group and they broke down, we just kind of basically gave her a list of things that we need assistance with, what our problems are, what we want to do with it, and she kind of just broke everything down. So I would definitely say, if you, I know time is like forever the issue, but if you have time just to sit down for like an hour one of the days and just kind of run through what you really need to utilize it, what it can do for you, and maybe they can break it down for you and even assign others and whatnot. I do have the challenge of our older volunteers who do come in and are not computer savvy at all. I really want to move over to Sign Up Genius and everybody sign up, but it doesn't work. But I do like the fact that you can sign up more than one date at one time for one individual. So if they sign up like a few times, you can just do that really quick if you have time to do that. I know it gets a lot.
I definitely help our older people and I have to go in and do that. Where and even this morning, I helped a woman sign up for September 29th to usher. She just can't, so I was able to go
I get that, because in our facilities, meals are a big thing for us. And receiving that, the consistency of getting meals is my biggest challenge. We are required to have like at least 2 meals within the facility per day. And sometimes and especially with the economy and everything is having volunteers making meals and stuff like that, it gets challenging having people come in. And then now COVID staring its ugly head again is not helping, because I mean, I can't blame people, the fear of COVID. And then when you say homeless, unfortunately, that fear goes 10 times higher sometimes. And if I can get feedback on how you guys get consistent volunteers, that would be very grateful. I'm really big wanting to learn more on like how onboarding people, volunteer training, what that could look like. I've tried different things and it has not really worked. I kind of just want to do like a basis going across the board. And then kind of plug in our personal things for our facility. but I'm really curious to kind of get feedback on that as well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Henrietta. And I think we should definitely discuss onboarding training. Leanne, I see your hands up.
Yes, and I'll do a quick introduction. I'm Leanne. I'm from ACS Technologies, but I'm going to kind of take that hat off for a minute. My previous background was as communications director at a large church. So I'm going to put that hat on because I think it relates much more to this. But I wanted to speak, one, Joseph, I know you mentioned Realm, and it does have volunteer management tools that can help with a lot of things. I do understand the learning curve because we had a large congregation, but a lot of our volunteers were the older ones. They had more time on their hands and they were the ones that wanted to jump in and do things. For us, we actually held a lot of small trainings. And so a lot of them were really wanting to learn and they had their phones and they were more than willing. It's just they didn't have someone at home that could sit there and teach them how to do it. And they're not going to learn it on their own. So what we did was we would say, hey, this Sunday, right after the service, we're going to have a 30-minute quick training. If you want to jump in this room with us, we'll do a quick little training. Everybody bring your phone. And we would do that at different times. We do it throughout the week too, just because I knew that if you offer 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, those older ladies are going to come because they have nothing else to do and they're going to go to lunch after. So it was a way to get them involved, but it also kind of helps them. And most of the time I ended up answering questions about text messaging and everything else while I was there. So it was great. But that is a way that you could probably get them to use more tools, is just to offer that training. And it doesn't have to be you. I actually trained a few other members that were really involved and they held training sessions on their own too. So then I didn't have to do all the training as staff. They could handle that on their own, which was wonderful for us. And then as far as training goes itself, Henrietta, we did a big training event every single year. At the beginning, we pulled all of our trainers in because we actually recruited during what we call our stewardship campaign every October. And so during stewardship, it was that idea of you're not just giving of your money, but we want to see you give of your time and your talents. And so sign up for things, sign up for opportunities to serve. And then in January, we pulled everybody together on a Saturday morning. We provided breakfast and we spent about an hour we prayed over them. We talked about the whole mission of serving, but then we provided a lot of statistics of things that were served, like how many meals did our homeless mission bring to the community last year, and how many hands did it take to run events last year, and things that people don't always think about. But then when you put it in front of them, they're like, wow, we're making a huge difference because it took this many people and it helped this many people on the other side of it. And typically when they see the statistics, they're very willing to jump in and be like, oh, I want to be a part of that. And that kind of helps them feel like they're getting something. But in reality, they're the one giving of their time and their talent. So it was a way to make them feel kind of like Patricia was saying, they want to get something from it. It kind of made them feel like, oh, I'm making a huge difference. And when they feel that way, then they're going to be a little quicker to say, well, I want to have that feeling of, satisfying someone and helping someone. So they're a little bit quicker to jump in and volunteer moving forward. But I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. I'm watching the clock, and I definitely think it's you guys mentioned onboarding and moving from recruitment to onboarding and training and continuing the conversation on engagement. One, I have a question because I volunteer in our children's ministry. I'm with those kindergartners like every other Sunday, and they're a blast. But one thing my church does, Joseph, kind of to your original question on, how do we get volunteers to take action, right? Affirmative action and really sign up for what works for them instead of you having to do it. My my church automatically signs you up. So basically, they sign you up, they say, hey, the schedule's out there. You need to either go in and try to swap with someone or decline or, move things around. And so I don't know if anyone here does that with their volunteers, but I travel quite a bit, so I'm like, I'm in there right away because there's certain Sundays I know just won't work. And they've kind of trained me on how to, you know, request a swap or to decline one and kind of give a reason or whatever. But I've noticed amongst myself and other teachers that has kind of helped us be a little bit more you know, we then take action on what does work for us, but at least they know that all the spots for the next quarter, you know, on Sunday and our Saturday night service are filled. So that's one thing that my church does. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but that's kind of helped bring some consistency. Um, and then also require action or a response from the volunteer as well. All right. Should we maybe kind of pivot to onboarding and training? I know Leanne mentioned training sessions after Sunday service. Curious if there's any you know, what does it look like when you're communicating expectations for roles or positions, kind of what that onboarding experience looks like once you know someone's interested. Does anyone have any pain points or things that they're trying to navigate?
So I'll hop in and
Okay.
share that in my position, it's kind of a tiered scenario because I oversee the parks, and then each park is responsible for onboarding their own volunteers, but all the volunteers come through me initially. And so I'll receive their applications via our online portal, and then I'll read them, figure out where they can best serve, and filter them down to the different park organizations. I find one of the pain points in that process for me is not everybody is on my time schedule or the time schedule of volunteers, because volunteers are coming in for our program nationwide. And I really struggle with figuring out how to not push myself too hard into their program and, you know, try to hold them accountable while still, because I need them, you know, to work with me and coordinate that, but do it in a timely manner. That's something I struggle with a lot because I will send an application through and they may not review it for 2 weeks. Then they review it and they call the individual and that they've accepted a position somewhere else. So that's a pain point in that very introductory onboarding process for us.
Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Similar pain points?
Sounds like similar pain points for just the corporate world too. Trying to get the hiring managers to
Yeah,
reply back and get people moving through. Yeah, I would be kind of curious too on how you get responses from your like internal teams to help get your volunteers onboarded. Maybe besides Joseph, since he seems to be a one-man show over there.
Heidi, do you mind if I pick on you for a second?
Sure,
Like,
no problem.
okay.
Hi, I'm Heidi. I'm from Elevation Church, up in Charlotte. Um, so as far as volunteer onboarding, we kind of have a multifaceted way that we get people onboarded. Obviously, we use Verified First. We have different forms. We have signups for when you want to go to orientation. Then they do the background check while they're there, and then the team follows up. So we actually have a volunteer onboarding team. And so our volunteer onboarding team is what really does most of the follow-up for us. So it's a group of individuals that will put them in the system, that will make sure all of their paperwork is done. They'll have reports. We use Salesforce as our database. So we're able to take our reports to kind of see where somebody's at in the process. Have they filled out this form? Have they filled out their background check? Is it back? Has it still pending? And those volunteer teams will follow up with those individuals directly, either via email or text. So we have a couple of different options. Depending on where they're at in that process, sometimes the text messaging works better for people because people kind of lose their emails a lot of times, or it goes into junk mail or something like that. So sometimes text messaging works out fine, or better. We do have a mass texting capability that we do if it's like the same message to everybody. If it's not, then it's either individuals just using their phone, or you can do Google Text. So it kind of like masks your phone number. So there's a few different options that you can do. But we really heavily rely on our volunteer teams to kind of oversee that. And it gives the volunteers kind of, who are more of an admin role, something to do. So you don't have to be ushers. You don't have to be greeters. If you're more of a behind the scenes person, like some of us are, you can do a data role. You can do that kind of an onboarding paperwork and kind of follow up process in that, and maybe have more of your personable people follow up directly with those individuals. But there is, I mean, it for sure is one of those things of like, you're following up quite often sometimes. So they have kind of like certain days that they'll follow up with certain people for a certain amount of time. So that's kind of, if that answers most of the question, but.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Heidi. And I think that kind of speaks to, I know some individuals when registering, we're talking about, especially when matching the volunteer, the individual to the right position, like beyond what the background screenshot, like how do we, like you said, the more personable, relatable, you know, maybe your extroverts, okay, ushers, greeters, right? You know, maybe they're in children's ministry. And then, you know, I love that you guys kind of opened up those additional volunteer opportunities that maybe are a little less traditional
Right.
in this space. Yeah. Does
Right.
anyone else have any ideas on that or have taken a similar approach? Okay. Any guys are a quiet bunch. I'm like, I need another poll question or something. What about let's focus on the matching of volunteers. Anyone want to share kind of their approach to that? Do you know, just accept volunteer applies to volunteer in this ministry, in this, you know, capacity? Or do you kind of expand on that and say, hey, this individual, I know you volunteered over here or applied to volunteer over here, but we have a need here. Have you, you know, and your personality or whatever might fit here. Has anyone kind of navigated that or has some challenges with that?
We actually have created job descriptions for all of the different volunteer positions that we have, and then we post availabilities within them. So we'll have like a specific camp host. We need 6 at this park, 4 at this park, 2 at this park, and so on and so forth. And then we also will have like volunteers or like visitor services, people that work, you know, checking people into their campsites through the kiosks or things like that. So we've created 6 different general job descriptions that are kind of across the whole system. And then once they get to the park and they start having those conversations and more, you know, in depth, and then they can say, okay, here at Farragut, you know, your volunteer or your visitor services role looks more like this because at our park we do these specific things. So it kind of breaks down, and that's helped us with recruitment because they can go online and they can see, you know, there still is 2 spots left at Round Lake and hop on those, or, you know, so far. So
Yeah.
that works for us to help fill all of the different nooks and crannies that we need.
Yeah. Awesome.
I like that, Patricia. I might have to steal that, Patricia.
Yeah, that's a great idea too. Do you have anything else, Henrietta?
Well, one of the things I've learned when talking to different volunteers, is I miss out on skills that they have. So I created a registration form, not only just listing what we need, but also kind of putting at the bottom, what skills do you have? Because they can say that they're retire our EMT, but they also have background in something else. And I happen to need that. And I didn't even know I had a volunteer who knew that. So, and the only reason I got that is because I just had a conversation with one of our volunteers and was just talking about different things. And she's like, oh, I can help you with that. And I was like, oh, really? but you're not able to have conversations with every single volunteer. So that's the part I had. But I like the job description part, Patricia, because sometimes I do have struggles with some of the volunteers and exactly what that looks like. So having that, I'm actually gonna create that today. So thank you.
Write it down. Don't forget, Henrietta. I just had a thought too. I don't know if anybody else has done this, and it kind of ties into a couple different things. So to Henrietta's point, you might not know everybody's personality and be able to talk to every volunteer. And then those that may be even on the fence of, do I want to raise my hand to serve? I'm not quite sure where I would fit best. Has anybody ever done maybe like a volunteer shadow day of sorts where like, you know, someone that is currently ushering and someone is interested but not maybe ready to commit can kind of shadow and learn what that volunteer role is to maybe help them go, yeah, no, that's not for me. And now I don't feel quite bad making it seem like I'm willing to do it and then back out from it. So kind of giving them the opportunity to really see what all the different, you know, ministries and volunteer roles and things like that are. Has anybody ever done anything like that by chance?
So what I do with on my branch is like I bring in the volunteer and I explain to them the different roles that we have. If they have to have certain licensing for it, but I just don't assign them the role. I tell them the first few weeks I'm gonna go with you until you tell me I am comfortable. Oh no, this is not for me. And there's no wrong in saying this because you might have every intention, but once you're physically there and you're along with the person or persons you're volunteering with, it totally changes. And it's okay, even if you are interested, but later on the line, you say, you know what, this is getting too much. I always have that door open. You're not getting penalized. We could always, if you're interested in another section and you want to shadow somebody, we can always do that so you can learn and see if that's something you're interested on. I just don't focus on what they want to do. I always leave that door open like, hey, there's other opportunities. If you want to shadow and see what that opportunity looks like, you're more than welcome to.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Becky.
We have in our orientation, we have the leaders of each volunteer area come and explain what each of those teams are. So there's a representative of each one that kind of gives it's kind of like a spiel, you know, like, hey, this is what we do when you're in ushers. This is what you're responsible for. This is what you're not. This is what your day looks like, in a very short, like 5-minute explanation. And then we do shadow the first week that they are set to volunteer. If it's not a children's church area, they are able to volunteer or to shadow that day. If it's a children's church area, they have to be fully background checked before they're allowed back there. But their first volunteer day is considered their shadow day. They're not technically on the clock. It's just their shadow to see what it's like, and then they can make the decision if it doesn't work well for them for the following week.
So we don't really use it as shadowing because we're so dispersed that when somebody commits to a park, that's the direction they're going. But we do use this for training. Some of our volunteers that will return season after season to a park really can fit into like hey, I'm really well versed in the cabin cleaning role or this role or that role. And then we turn around and use them on their third or fourth season as a trainer their first couple of weeks for those parks that have a whole bunch. So our volunteer supervisors within each park aren't necessarily responsible for training everybody. And that seems to be, it has good and bad outcomes. It really kind of lets some of our volunteers have ownership of the park. But then sometimes, you know, it still requires a lot of oversight to make sure they're getting trained in the way that we would like to see them perform their services. So something to think of.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, good. So that wasn't a bad idea I had, is what I'm hearing.
I don't think so. So I volunteer in our jail ministry at my church, and I'm really glad they gave me kind of a 1-day pass after my background check was all good to go. I got to go in, and you know, the adult facility wasn't my thing. young, the youth detention where I get to meet with young women. That's kind of more my style. And had I not experienced that, I could have been sticking with maybe a part of the ministry that, I don't want to say the passion wasn't there because I felt like the Lord was calling me there, but at the same time, it may have been a little not super aligned with the direction or kind of the things on my heart. So I thought it was a great question, Steph, because I was thinking, I was like, did I? And I was like, yeah, I did. So really good question. Yeah. Does anyone else have any techniques that they use to I loved what Henrietta shared on like, hey, I didn't even know that there were needs or skills, that we needed from volunteers or that there was a need there until I asked, what else they're available or willing to do. So does anyone else do anything similar to that of like collecting kind of where your volunteers, where their passions are or what they feel like is on their heart or skills?
Not yet, but I will.
I was just gonna say, so my name's Jenna. I do work at ACS Technologies with Leanne. And I'm on the marketing side now, but I worked on what we considered our small to medium-sized church team for almost 5 years. And I came on board February 2020. So if you can imagine, it was quite the introduction to the church world. So the majority of the churches I spoke with, though, you're looking at like 25 in typical weekly attendance, maybe up to 100. And most of the time what that means is you have a few people doing a lot of things. You have a couple of volunteers who you're probably using across your entire ministry. And it's difficult to get people to commit, right? I mean, I know myself included, I'm a mom. If you call me and need me, I am there all day, any day. But if you say, hey, Jenna, will you commit to being here? It's terrible, not my best quality, but I'm like, don't put me down. Just call me if you need me. So to speak to Henrietta's point, one of the things, and this is with people using Realm, they would tell us is we just can't get people to use it, right? It's that learning curve. How do we get, so what Leanne said does help, but having a way just to get them to put those skills and interests, it is so helpful because there are things that people don't think are helpful or needed in the church that really are. And it could be something very small, but I feel like everybody has that party trick up their sleeves that they don't think is cool until they're at the party and they show somebody and they're like, I didn't know you could do that. So I think in the church world, just providing that opportunity, because it could let somebody say, well, you know what? I wouldn't have even thought about volunteering for that, but I can do this. I don't mind doing that. And that's something that's very small. And so we found that helps overcome that reluctance for people to maybe, say, hey, I'll volunteer on this team. It's like a easier transition. So that's just a tip I wanted to throw out there.
We have extra skills and interests and passions as just a question on our application. And so that helps a ton. Somebody might volunteer as a camp host in one of the parks, and this translates to the church in different ways, but they might volunteer as a host doing visitor services or something like that. But then they put on there, hey, I'm a previous woodworker. Oh, well, our horse corrals at that park really need some attention. Maybe you designate so many hours a week towards visitor services and then this project as well on the side. So like I said, we just kind of get that right up front in our application that we have everybody fill out.
I like it. Sounds great. Again, I'm also keeping an eye on time for everybody. And I've been told a time or two that I'm good at keeping the culture at our company upbeat and positive and happy and whatnot. So I really like this question I want to pose to everybody on, do you have any strategies to, boost your volunteer morale, especially if it's maybe a challenging event or more of a long-term event, to continue to keep them excited, engaged, and obviously willing to remain volunteering? So curious to see what anybody does to keep the volunteers happy and obviously coming back.
Go ahead, Leah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, so from our experience, how we used to handle it was we would have that large training at the beginning of the year, and that kind of helped us to kind of pump them up a little bit, get them excited for it. But then throughout the year, we would actually recognize our volunteers, not always one-on-one. But we may share a testimonial story from a volunteer, or we may share how much our volunteers made a difference at a specific event or a specific mission that we had going on in the community. And that just helped people. I mean, one, it helped them to feel great and feel recognized. But then two, it kind of helped us to recruit throughout the year as well. So people who were new throughout the year, or maybe they missed that sign up, or they didn't even think that they really fit in that role, they heard that testimonial, or they saw the difference that team made, and they said, hey, I want to be a part of that. So when the time came around again, or maybe even that week, they would reach out and say, hey, how do I get in on this? So it kind of helped us to keep up with recruiting throughout the year, but it also helped us to make them feel like they're still being seen and they're still being needed and thanked, even though we may not call them out by name one by one every time.
Yeah, that's great. It's kind of a little twofold there. Henrietta, did you still have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, we do broadcast on our website, Thank You Thursdays, or Thursday Grateful Thankfuls, something like that, where we post the volunteers to say thank you for coming to all our facilities, actually, whether it's the shelter or our facilities. One thing I do like to do is I definitely give back good feedback, especially people who bring in meals. If the residents come to me and they're like, they really love that food, I'm immediately calling the volunteer and just raving as much as I can, just to kind of encourage them. Because I know sometimes when you're making a meal, one thing, the feedback I do get a lot back is whether they're going to like it or not. And most of the time, even if they really like it that much, they'll still eat it. But once they do say they like a certain meal, I also always do like a thank you when I'm sending out a note or something, just to kind of encourage them and say that you're taking out this time. We do volunteer hours for our volunteers, and I'll write a note, and it's pointless. It's more for our data, but I'll write a note and say, hey, you got five volunteer hours. And I break it down. Like some of them will go, what is that for? I was like, well, you went to the store and bought it. You took it home, you cooked it, and then you drove all the way here and dropped it off, and you served it. Like all that for our facilities, just to kind of keep them coming back. That seems to show promise. When we are at the facility, I tend to engage, and the staff members tend to engage in the activity of whatever volunteers there, just to kind of show that we really appreciate coming in, because sometimes our residents don't want to be a part of it. So if we are present to show that we appreciate them being there, that kind of helps them to continue to come back and boost them. I do want to ask a question based off of this, but
Yeah, go for it.
is that okay?
Yeah.
Has anybody had a challenge when you're doing an event, or if anybody you're dealing with volunteers and they tend to get offended really quick if because we work with residents, I have a challenge sometimes where I'm gonna say this a little bit quieter, sorry, but we have residents who suffer with mental health issues, and sometimes they don't want to participate. And I've had a few volunteers who just can't understand that factor, where in the beginning, when I sent them the email saying, hey, I have 4 people who signed up and they're willing to do it, by the time the actual event happens, I might have 1 and I might have none. A lot of them do seem to be geared up. I'm just trying to figure out different ways to word that to get them to understand that it's nothing towards them. It's just unfortunately what we deal with sometimes. So please, any feedback.
That's a tough one, and I don't think I can necessarily help with that. So if anybody has any brainstorming ideas, even if they haven't come across that particular situation, because yeah, I see how that could be somewhat of a sensitive topic for everybody, and you know, words can get taken the wrong way, even with all the good intentions in the world. Yeah. Anybody have a
So
chance?
is your trouble before they get there or while they're on site?
Sorry. The trouble is when they get there and they're just not as enthusiastic about it. They just don't care. Like they'll walk past them and not say anything. And it's like it's something could have happened that led up to that. And unfortunately, because of like HIPAA rules and stuff like that, I can't share the incident. I can't share the information. I'll just say, oh, they're having a bad day. But how many bad days can you have? But I need them. Sometimes I'm like, okay, this is the environment that we're in. We can have bad days like for 2 weeks straight. And that can be the issue. And it's not that I don't think you coming back, it'll be different, because you can come back 4 times. And that 5th time, you get 5 people participating. I have a whole house who's energized and it's fun. And then we'll go another 4 weeks and it's the same thing.
Well, I don't know if this will help or not. So on Wednesday nights, I attend an Episcopal church here in Atlanta called Holy Comforter. And Holy Comforter is a mission of the Diocese of Atlanta. And they serve predominantly people that are living in halfway houses with developmental disabilities or mental health challenges. 90% of the people that go there are. So very similar to you, people come in and cook. I was sent down there with my wife, or my wife was technically sent. She brought me, to be fair, to see what the Holy Comforter might need from us at St. Catherine's. And what the rector down there told us was they needed presence. And so, like you were saying, we started going every Wednesday night. We'll be going for a year and a half now. It took, in some cases, months before the people got comfortable with us there. And I think what you might be wanting to consider in structure for something like that is looking for a group of people that will be able to be on site on a more frequent basis. So their faces and they become part of the community as opposed to the next group that just cycled in this week. Because that's what we see when other groups come in to cook, right? They're different. If a large group shows up, everybody in the church clams up. Okay. But we're there week after week. We're just part of them. And so it may help to have people that, if you can find people that will come frequently, and then they can start to build those relationships just by their presence, not by doing anything more than just being there.
Right. And that's the thing. We do have I am big on consistency, because in anything that you're doing, the feedback I always get from our residents is the fact that they're just going to be here one time and that's it. They're not going to see him again. So I really want to have more consistent. The problem I'm having is sometimes with some of these groups, it's understanding how long this consistency might have to take for them to grow a relationship with you guys and to trust the fact that you're going to be there. Sometimes I feel like they'll come, like maybe like they'll pick a once a month that they come, and it's like, these many weeks have gone by and you come. So the next month, I'm not going to they got to get used to you. So maybe we need to do about 6 months before they get used to you. And sometimes I get the feedback that that's not always wanted. It's not, pardon me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and real quick, while Henrietta's talking there, I would really encourage, because I'm watching the clock and I know everyone's gonna have to hop in just a little bit. If you're comfortable with it, feel free to drop in your contact information in the chat. You can direct message. So Henrietta and Joseph, if you guys kind of want to elaborate on that discussion, that way, that's really the goal of this event, is just to get together and start building these relationships. We will, if you're comfortable, I will share ACS's contact information and also ours at Verified First. There's also a QR code here to our nonprofit and volunteer management group. There's, I don't know, anywhere from 400 to 500 individuals in there roughly. So if you want to scan that, it's on Facebook, engage there as well. There's a lot of resources. We've got some awesome individuals in there that engage in the conversation and provide resources and all that. And then what I'll say in this last minute, and I know it's kind of an abrupt wrap up, but there's going to be a survey once I end today's event would love to hear what you thought about the discussion. We've done these events before on different scales and different topics and you know, roles and all of that. So if you have feedback or ideas, we are all ears. We're always wanting to hear from you all. So I'll leave it at that, and let everyone kind of have a great rest of their, you know, the best Thursday of the week is what I would like to say. So, thanks again for joining and for being on camera. So much, you know, so engaging when we can see your guys' faces. And yeah, feel free to email or engage with one another, and we'll keep you posted on the next event.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Bye.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
It was nice meeting everybody.